So I hope you enjoyed the last few videos on some things about Jupiter, whether it's the gravity assist, the speed of light measurements, the extreme parameters, it's all gas, whatever the case may be. But the real delight about Jupiter is talking about its moons. That's the real fun thing to talk about. So it turns out that Jupiter has something like 75 or more moons, and it's just another one of the extreme parameters of Jupiter. The Earth, for example, only has one moon. Jupiter has 75. But really, it's the first 4 moons that we like to talk about here, and these are so-called the Galilean moons, because when Galileo had sort of his first telescope, and he pointed them up at Jupiter, he saw those moons for the first time. And the moons, if Jupiter looks like this is Jupiter's planet right here. Of course, they have some ordering to them because one's got to be closer and the next ones are farthest. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they don't always line up like this. I'll show in a minute here. The first one is called Io or Io, depending on what side of the Atlantic Ocean you're on. Then there's Europa. Then there's Ganymede. Then there's Callisto. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about all 4 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in the next few videos. First of all, just a few graphics though as we get going here. So this would be, for example, what Galileo sort of did and saw way back in the day. This weird looking thing here would have been his first telescope here that he looked up, and these are some of the drawings that he might have made here. And you can see that what he's trying to sort of capture here is sort of there's Jupiter there, the big central planet. And what he noticed is that these little stars, which we now know are the moons of Jupiter, weren't always in the same position. So they might have looked here, and then it might have looked like this, and it might have looked like that. And of course, what he was seeing was the moons here orbiting, moving around in their orbit like that. Okay, and so they would be in different sides of Jupiter depending on when you looked. This is an example of what you could see in even a small telescope, or if you're lucky, even binoculars. So it's the kind of thing that when Jupiter is known to be up, you should definitely try to do this at some point. Maybe look at it in a telescope or binoculars, because you will see the moon. So I'm not sure which is which at the moment here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, probably something like that. So that would be, once again, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Okay, and this is a picture I took here in San Luis Obispo. And let me just show you sort of what they would look like in Stellarium, our solar system simulator, so you can get an idea about what we're talking about here. So I have the solar system simulator running here, and I have it queued up on Jupiter at the moment here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom in on Jupiter. Here we go, and you can start to see the little dots appear around them, which are the moons. And as I keep zooming, the names will become apparent. And so there we go. There's Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. And there's another one of the moons there sort of creeping in there. But what I'll do now is let me just speed up time a little bit here. Pull up the time menu down here and just get going. And you can see that as we go, now the sort of the twisting and the angles, that has to do with the Earth's perspective on Jupiter as the simulation runs. But as I keep going now, you can see that the moons sort of pass in and out and behind Jupiter as they orbit around it. Big Dan, there's Io just disappearing. Those might have been some of the eclipses and the reappearances and disappearances that Romer might have looked for speed of light. But that's sort of what you get up there, and it's just absolutely fascinating. So, continuing then, here's sort of what you'd get of the moons as you looked at them then, of Jupiter, of course. Here's Io, the first one right here. Then there's Europa. Then there's Ganymede and Callisto. So this is sort of what you'd get. And this chart is meant to sort of give you a comparison, a size comparison between Jupiter's moons here, as you see, that you see, and say our moon and even the Earth. So see, our moon still holds its own in terms of size. Maybe it's somewhere between Io and Europa right there. But we, as we said, sort of have a large moon going for us. And so what I'm going to do now is, it turns out that this so-called delight in astronomy here about discussing the moons, let me just start into that now. And I'm going to tell you sort of a lot of things about Io and Europa, because there's some really cool things about both of them, and not so much about Ganymede and Callisto, because there isn't all that much to say. But we'll sort of proceed that way, and that'll complete our coverage of Jupiter. So it's Jupiter's moons coming up here in the next couple videos.